Good afternoon, LinkedIn friends, Value First Nation. Welcome to another episode of Value First Platform AI Data Readiness with Trisha Miriam. How you doing, Trisha?
I'm great. How are you, Chris?
I am doing wonderful. Excited for the conversation today. As we get into, I think what's behind our conversation last week, where it's pretty easy as an administrative group or as management to say, okay, these are the things that we're going to do to get our data ready. This is why we need to do them. But when you get into the how, unless the teams and the people using the HubSpot portal in this case, or any CRM for that matter, understands like how it all connects, like I've had a very hard time, like unless you get that kind of understanding. And it's not it's not the flashy topic, data modeling, process mapping. It's almost always on the to-do list but never actually done. So I'm curious, uh as you think about this, and even after last week, like maybe some thoughts about, okay, I would imagine you felt like you're on the right track because some good tools. Now it's how do we help them get applied?
Well, number one is, as you know, Cyber Monday was yesterday, and the inbound tickets were on sale. And of the clients I have that are, I don't know, they have the most robust teams that are doing the most exciting things, and yet, they have me to manage their HubSpot instance, which means that they don't even have a full-time resource dedicated to HubSpot. And in one case, they adopted HubSpot, didn't even know what it was. So the current team was just like, none of them had ever worked with HubSpot before. So number one, I'm trying to get them to go to inbound, because I feel like there's so much that happens there to sway them into come into the mindset of this is a universe of my own creation. And here's inspiration in terms of the stories that I'm seeing out there, like what people are doing, what people are able to do. And then now I'm inspired to come bring this back to my business and make sales more efficient, make marketing more efficient, understand better what business is really doing. So that was my first step this week of just trying to, here's the discount code, go get those tickets.
Did they?
I have no idea. I really hope that they did, but I have no idea. Right. But the second thing is, I lost an argument this week. And I mean argument in the sense of, you want to do this thing, here's what I recommend. And I was not persuasive enough. In this particular structure, this company works with a lot of businesses who have a lot of different products. And so they're sort of selling to product teams. Sometimes these teams belong to child companies, sometimes they don't. But very often, each product has its own management team, their own buying committee. So it makes a lot of sense to create some sort of hierarchy within each company to represent that. And there are a lot of duplicate accounts on this portal, because in the old days, or before I came on board, they were it was company hyphen product name, company hyphen product name. So that was one way of doing it.
Yeah.
And I have persuaded them to adopt a custom object to hold all of these disparate products instead, as a way to roll this stuff up together. But the argument I lost this week was that, and it's a new company, but now they have an onboarding team, and they're starting to onboard companies and support them. And I think a model that would work for them really well today and in the future is to have an onboarding pipeline that supports individual deals that are tied to these individual product objects that are associated with the company objects, which are associated to the contacts. I lost that argument. So all of the properties that they want to use to track how, like whether a company is currently being onboarded or not, how long they're going to be in onboarding, what the team is that is responsible for that, they're all being attached to the account. That's the argument I lost.
And so it sounds like it might have been a similar argument with the custom object, though.
Won that one.
Right. So I'm curious, like, why you think you won that one and not the other one?
There's another consultant involved as well who is doing some work, who supports the custom object for the individual products, but was not part of this conversation. So maybe it's just me.
It's not just you, but like more people definitely helps.
Yeah.
But like, I think you mentioned the goal before we jumped on the call. Like in your mind, like why is the custom object route or the separate object route, if we can say that, better?
Because I see the enrichment they're doing of their data in HubSpot because they are going to market trying to, like, they're targeting companies that have multiple products that are a sweet spot for their software. So I just envision there will be a time where they have multiple of these products that are in deals at the same time, but they'll have different buy committees associated with each one. And potentially one business with each one of them. And then they'll need to be onboarding, and they'll be onboarding at different times. Maybe some will be done, maybe some will be concurrent. And this is going to get messy if there's only a single property to store like onboarding start date, end date on the account record.
Right. So some of this relates to different teams being able to own records and data and maintain it without, like, is that how you think about the custom object that's supporting products? Or like why was that a clear, like, why does that make so much sense to you?
In this case, it's because the company, like, it's almost like a company, like a parent company, child company relationship, except in some cases, these are child companies. And in other cases, it's just a different product underneath the company. So just doing a parent-child relationship did not adequately document the relationship here. So that's why we wanted a different object. That's why I wanted a different object. But also each one of these products could have, on the customer side of things, a different buying committee, different contacts associated with deciding whether or not they want to have this, different budgets.
Okay.
So they almost feel like their own company, but they're not always. Sometimes it's just a different product. And they will have different onboarding pipelines. They're not all coming on board at the same time.
Right. It's like a whole flow that just needs to be managed separately.
Yeah.
And differently than other flows. And usually that involves other people on the team having to manage that data and understand that data.
Mm-hmm.
And so that makes sense from an onboarding perspective. And it doesn't make sense why you lost the argument on the company side because it's the same reason over there. Like, unless that onboarding team is ultimately responsible for the account record at all times. But I'd be surprised if that was the case, because usually sales has some jurisdiction over that record. Are there multiple teams trying to like own that record now?
There's multiple teams involved in just the onboarding.
Right. And so the team that is responsible for onboarding is supposed to go to the company record to figure out start dates. And then how are they managing the process after that?
They're using a third-party tool to manage, to do the project management of this, which at some point will be integrated with HubSpot, but is not integrated at this time.
There we go. So anything off of the company record is likely seen as duplicate work. Okay. That's a hard one to win, for sure. In times like this, I do have concerns about the word custom, because that like exudes more work, more development, more cost, like whenever you use that word. Mm-hmm. So something I've learned over the last year, especially as I learned more about ERPs and that industry and IT in general, like the huge difference between configuration of a system and customization of a system. And in the HubSpot ecosystem, we use those words interchangeably. Yeah. We almost never use the word configure, actually. It's always customize your record view page. And it's like, oh, but we're using cards that are out of the box. We're not doing any kind of custom work. And that's where I start to get into the lack of knowledge around what objects are actually available in HubSpot. And so I feel so strongly about this that I've started building out a learning hub that's going to be very, very focused on this topic. But not only that, like, because I try to look at other people who are talking about similar things and who have been doing it longer. And so Arrows, as an example, right? Like one of the original built for HubSpot apps, specifically for the use case of onboarding, right? And they were able to get this done for people using HubSpot, being right alongside HubSpot. And now they are out here making sure everybody knows about HubSpot's new project object, right? Which should be ready-made. And that's where, as you deliver that news, it's like, oh, now we've got a project object over here and a project object over in our third-party system. And that is a very hard argument to win. Mm-hmm. But when you can start from a place of native and configuration versus custom objects, because even in your first use case, you're describing the way that I think about listings, the listings object, as like kind of like a second. It can be an alternative product library when you need products to be associated to other objects in the portal, especially when it relates to something that is being purchased and delivered. And that's part of the beauty of like how we like the fact that we can rename those objects too now, right? So, but having said that, when we talk about helping people learn what they need to, it's an interesting like tug of war that I'm playing right now, because I built this hub and you see all objects are at the end here. And like, this is all foundation and like why. But as I'm building it out, I'm like, yeah, people need to see the objects first because they're going to look for properties. They're going to look for like practical uses of the thing. They don't necessarily want to learn about the why and the what so much as the how right away. So trying to put things like this front and center so that they can see, oh, I know contact and deal and company. I didn't know all these objects.
Mm-hmm.
But when we keep seeing them together, it hopefully starts to sink in. But also, like, when you start from that perspective of HubSpot specific, anybody who thinks their job is not HubSpot checks out like immediately, right? Like they're
Mm-hmm.
not going to inbound
Mm-hmm.
because they don't want to learn about HubSpot, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they think HubSpot is what you learn at inbound, which is very far from the case.
Mm-hmm.
Albeit even when you get people there, you still have the minefield of like, the TikToks of the world telling you how great ads are and social and like a bunch of stuff that's arguably not going to help them. But there's a ton of good learning there too. But it's still hard to like. I mean, it's kind of the point, right? You don't want to separate the orange from the experience. But that is where I have success, especially with leaders. And it's like, if we don't understand what HubSpot's doing for our business, then like one, we're never going to learn it, but two, we're never going to get the value that we say that we want out of it, and our teams aren't. And that's where I go to like the unified views, because in your situation, and often the reason to differentiate on objects, if we go over here to like unified customer view, like what this is supposed to solve. We have 3 different systems tracking customer interactions and none of them talk to each other.
Mm-hmm.
By the time a customer reaches out frustrated, we've already missed 5 warning signs scattered across different platforms. Our best people spend half their day hunting for context instead of solving problems. Marketing can see email clicks, sales can see call notes, service can see tickets, but nobody sees the whole picture.
And I see all the time that the HubSpot portal doesn't even accurately reflect active customers. So if you wanted to send an email to your active customers, a lot of times the fact that they've churned lives in a billing system somewhere that isn't getting synced in real time to HubSpot. Maybe it's getting synced once a month, once a quarter, or never. It's on the to-do list. So it's really common that your stuff is just all over the place and you don't have a unified customer view.
Right. And so this is where I start. Like, if we can't get a leader on board with the importance of this, like change is going to be very hard to come by. And they're going to put properties wherever they want because that's where it seems easiest. But then you're forcing people to go off the system because they can't make changes because then sales will see it, or sales wants to name it a certain way and we need to name it this way as the customer success team because this is the way our other system names it. So no system can be up to date. And as soon as we can get them to this level, and there's 4 of them, right? Unified customer view, revenue, business context, and team enablement. Like, and I'm suggesting that starting with the customer view is the foundation that makes the others like possible inside of a system, right? Most people have these things in their head, or they create it in a slide deck or spreadsheet along the way because they're exporting from conversations with people that they have in the Monday morning sales meeting where it's like, how's it going? And here's why all my deals are stalled, but here's why I'm so naively optimistic that they're all in still good shape. And then our managers and leaders turn that into slides and into stories in these other ways, which gives the feeling of like, we know what's going on. with our business. But outside of these very like singular moments, it's so hard to hand off that understanding to anybody after that meeting, or if they can't find the slide deck right away, or if the slide deck was from last week and things have changed since last week, right? So whenever it's a battle of where the information should be, it starts here for me. Because if you can get here, then it's not about which system needs to support it, which is often the struggle with HubSpot. It's like, oh, it's not a project management system. Like, we're not going to do that over there. It's not an ERP, so we can't track like invoices and revenue. It turns into like a how. Like, because HubSpot is usually the only place that you can get a true from first touch to last touch unified view, because none of the other systems care about anything that happens before closed one, usually, right? And HubSpot does, and has a spot for the rest of the data, which is where, this stuff comes in, right? But so it's a catch-22 a little bit about where we can start in a understanding that like we have to live inside of HubSpot's data model. That's what makes this possible and what makes it work. So there is some level of, you might have other systems that can do something similar, but they're still not going to get you to a unified customer view without a significant amount of, development work, data warehousing, like all this stuff, right? It's what HubSpot's built to do. That's why we like it. So is that a conversation that you think you could have or could have had in terms of helping people understand? Like, I'll finish with, when we can put it on a different object and then associate that object properly, all of a sudden you can create these very dynamic views on just a contact record or a company record that are much easier to maintain. And you don't have teams scrolling and clicking all over to try and find what's theirs, which is usually an outcome. Or you just have one team that we got to serve them. It's usually sales. And then good luck, CS, like getting to the data. You got to create all your bookmarks for all your tabs and go right to the spot. Is that a conversation that you think you could have?
It is. I think it has to start there.
All right. Well, we'll get them next time.
Get them next time. Can't win every one. It's all a learning experience. And I think that's a great reminder of how to approach it when you have these conversations. Start with the big picture.
Yeah. And especially in these times of like, you're just not going to win that argument in the moment if there's another system involved and that team owns that system. So it really does become like, what's the easiest way for you to get the data you need in the lowest friction way possible so that you can do your job in the other system? But often, I think there's always opportunity to say, okay, who's the one manually like transitioning data, right? Can we set up an export like for them that will start to be designed in a way to emulate the integration that needs to happen? And if we can take 10 minutes at the end of every day to bring the information back and forth, that's the thing, like where, okay, you don't have to manage, let's set up this projects object because it's going to mirror the onboarding work that you're doing in the other system. And as long as we can set it up so that it's ready to just receive that data at the end of the day, you don't have to, it's not double work anymore, right? And there's almost always an opportunity to say, like, this person is spending an hour on data entry anyways. Like, can we take 10 minutes of that and like find another gain in the system that, like, once you, because now we get to creating like whole new views and like ways to support that team in HubSpot that go way beyond like just look at the company object or here's your little card of properties. Sending stuff via emails like gets easier, like any kind of notifications, exports in the other direction, because we can probably move, like creating the project based on a closed one activity is a thing, right? And now they're exporting data from HubSpot to support their other system, which removes the manual data entry. But I could tell you this, like, the lack of knowledge of HubSpot objects is so deep that I have to correct, even with all this, like I have Claude helping me build out all of this stuff. And I've got all this documentation of 18 native objects, 18 native objects, 18 native objects.
Wait, but it says 25 up there.
Yeah. The fun.
Why does it say 25 right there?
Because it's actually 19 now, and there's, we're throwing in the calls and the emails and the meetings.
Okay.
Are in here now, like the activity objects here. Either way, Claude always has access to an extensive list of which objects actually exist in HubSpot. And almost always, when it's not one of the big ones, it will say, oh, projects. It will actually, even though all of the instructions are saying like, this is the ID, this is how you get it out of HubSpot, it will look for custom objects first with both projects and services. Because because that's the common understanding of HubSpot, is that HubSpot doesn't do that stuff. And that's where
zeitgeist to an extent that Claude assumes it.
Well, that's the training data it has, right? Like, so if we know that the training data ended at the end of last year, the object library had only been out for 4 months at that time. And so that's how powerful this is to like overcome. But I think this relates to like HubSpot is fill in the blank that has nothing to do with services, projects, post-sale. Like HubSpot is synonymous with marketing first, CRM second, and now it's starting to be sales too, maybe service. And those are all things we're having to overcome. So I always like don't take for granted that what people perceive the word HubSpot to mean, right? Because that's also the most magical conversations where it's just like you get them to the point, oh, I didn't know HubSpot could do that. Like completely changes the dynamic of the conversation.
Yeah, and I'm finding out about that usually after the fact. Oh, we just bought this tool. Oh, HubSpot does that. Oh, we just signed with this other new tool. Oh, HubSpot has that too.
Yeah. And what I'm hopeful, because it's very easy to just go like very use case specific, right? And come at it from, oh, it's not a project management tool. Oh, it's not a help desk. Oh, it's not a sales enablement tool. Like all these things it's not supposed to be, right? So if we say, oh, you can do sales enablement in HubSpot, or you can do project management, it's like, no, I can't. It's not one of those, right? Instead, coming at it from a perspective, oh, these are the objects available. It's like, oh, services? That's an object? It's like, yeah. Oh, what would you use that for? And it's like obvious, like service, right? Like, and that starts the conversation from a much different place of like, we're trying to replace what you know already to be true and just say like, did you know? Like, yes, all these objects exist. And this is the 18 version. I still got to add projects here, which I'm getting a ton of run with, by the way, thanks to the help of Claude, somebody who's not a project manager. Starting to be pretty magical in terms of doing some project work in HubSpot right next to the customer data. Like that's why ultimately I'd say, and this is in terms of AI too, like all this relates to AI data readiness. So I hope that's not lost on our audience. Like this is the context that makes everything else matter, in my opinion, right? Because even revenue can be like misrepresented. Like companies that own that where like 50% of their revenue is from one big customer, right? But if they had a unified customer view, they would be smacked in the face by the fact that they've got to serve like 600 calls a month to take care of that customer, which means all the margins of that product is garbage. And it's like, it's embedded in the culture. It's like, oh, we know we don't make a lot of money out that customer, but it's 50% of our revenue. Like, what are we supposed to do? So even the revenue, that's why I don't put revenue first, because like there's often a lot behind the scenes. Like humans do so much to cover up like gaps in context to say like, oh, I spend an hour at least just solving for these problems every single day. And you're never going to see that because we don't track all the supply chain communications related to what this customer wants. We just do it for them because they pay. Meanwhile, the customers on the other side probably wondering, man, I wish this would be easier. Like, I don't like spending an hour with this person every day to understand status of my order. Right? So it sets a great foundation. Also, it's very hard to say, no, I don't want that. Like unified customer views, like everybody wants it, like, obviously. So it's my favorite first agreement. It's the first agreement, like in my opinion. Like, do we understand like this would be immensely valuable for our business and our customers and our teams if we had this, if this was real, right? It's like, okay, so what do we need to do to get there? Understand what your teams like need to see, right? And when I say teams and humans now, like it always translates to what AI needs to see as well. Like, by the way, this idea of unified context that HubSpot's talking about, bringing that data together. Even if you connect all the systems, if we're not associating things properly, like on the records, like the context goes haywire immediately, right? So understanding what teams need to see and how they need to see it and when they need to see it is paramount. And you cannot rely on vendors to help you with this part. One of my first conversations with an ERP vendor was a great signal in terms of like why we are in this place, where I show up to the conversation, having talked to the customer, and the customer said explicitly, we do not want our sales team logging in to a second system to see customer data, right? Past orders, which is almost always an opportunity to bring that into HubSpot in some way. Because surprise, Sales team wants to understand everything that's been happening with that customer, especially if you're asking them to like expand and renew and upsell and cross sell. It's like, oh, what have they ordered in the past? I mean, just as a human being, like if I know you did something with my company like a year ago, I feel responsible to know if I'm trying to ask you for more value or more money or do something, like I feel like I should know about that, right? And what do sales teams do when they don't have access to that information? They're calling or emailing the people who do have the information, right? Which are the back office teams, right? And so that context is understood. But even though I went into the conversation with the ERP team with that context, 15 minutes in, the technical contact was like, oh, well, we could just give them an account login. Like they can log in to the ERP to see that. It's like, no. First of all, they don't want to. Second of all, that costs money, like all those licenses. And it was just so, first of all, it's obviously not in their best interest not to sell more licenses. So that's certainly part of it. But in this moment, it was like there is some aloofness happening here where they really don't know how bad it is out there. And that teams have had to settle for this environment where it's like, this is how you got to do it. And love it or hate it, this is the system that we're using as a business. And every time we've tried to fix this in the past, it's gone horribly. So we're just gonna deal with it.
There does seem to be quite a lot of this is how it works. We're just like we're used to not trying, demanding, asking for any more than what we have. And that any slice of, with whether it's the marketing team, the sales, or the service team, their slices of information are super narrow. Like they don't really have any scope into what other groups are doing. And that's status quo, and it's just accepted. But to your point, I can't imagine, how many portals out there have like a field on the account record that says something like do not call or something like that, because either they're not paying their bills or they're really, really unhappy. And so when expansion is going through and looking at who to like touch base with to try to upsell into like the next thing before the end of this quarter, that's a really hot button there. And don't talk to that company right now, especially trying to get money out of them. And in a lot of cases, that's all sales sees. They can't actually see why that happened or the history to it. It's just like a field that they have to use in a binary way.
Yep. And it almost always starts at a place because we don't do the data modeling. We don't do, we don't do visuals. Like, even though we know that people like learn better often when we have visuals, when we have maps, we don't do that. So we're in the moment. I need to put this information somewhere because I need to know it. This other person needs to know it. This is the place that I feel would be easiest to do that right now. So this is where we're going to add the property, right? And it even gets done in ways where it's not reportable and it doesn't do anything outside of that process in that moment, right? And I know I've got probably better language somewhere, but this is the general gist, right? Like, system of blindness because we can't see what we need to see because everything's been built for the internal process in terms of like, how do I get my job done right now? Like, not how do I get my job done later? Like almost ever. right? And I want stuff like this to work, like relationship intelligence is what we're trying to achieve there, right? And if you make this possible for AI, like it can like skyrocket what you can understand from your relationships. But to understand the efficiency that everybody wants, like gets enabled like by that is huge. But this is where we can come back to our learning. Like it doesn't come from the way that we normally approach this stuff, which is force and governance and required properties and flags and like you better do your damn job notifications like everywhere. It comes from actually understanding like what's happening. Why am I needing to do this? Like that's almost always a miss for marketers. Like, okay, because it's kind of the same. It goes both ways in terms of like good. I think most humans show up like, okay, I want to believe you. Like, if you say it's good for the process, like, let's go. Like, I'm in. But then if I don't feel like that value coming back, right? If I can't see the customer's demeanor changing or the sales conversations getting easier or us bringing in the right fit, like all the things you told me would happen if I filled out these extra fields, I'm not going to keep filling out those extra fields because that's a waste of time. Right. And so I don't know. Was this helpful at all? Do you think there is a chance in hell that like educational materials like this can be used in a way that can actually get us out of this like 25-year hole of like dirty data and people not using systems?
I think so. You have to run, but I think people just don't understand that HubSpot was built to be the unified customer view. That's why it was built. And people are still treating it as just a marketing tool or a sales tool. And that's where we really have to re-educate, is that it's supposed to be the thing where you can get the whole story, whether it's your CEO, your VP of sales, your VP of ops, whoever it is who needs to know what the hell is going on with this account. Anybody can go figure that out. There's one place to go, and that's its real strength. But it has to be built in a way to support that.
That it does. That also helps get our data ready for AI. So we'll be back at it next week, trying to continue sharing that message of how we get there. Thanks so much, Trisha.
Thank you.
See you next week.
See you next time.